Photography is the art of capturing light with a camera to create an image. It involves adjusting the camera's aperture, shutter speed, and ISO to produce a properly exposed image. There are many different types of photography and cameras to choose from. To get started, choose a camera that fits your budget and needs and start practicing and experimenting with different settings and compositions. There are three main camera settings that you can adjust to control the exposure of an image: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Aperture refers to the size of the camera's lens opening, which controls the amount of light that enters the camera. A larger aperture, a smaller f number, allows more light to enter the camera, while a smaller aperture, a larger f number, allows less light to enter. Aperture also affects the depth of field, or the amount of the image that is in focus. A larger aperture, a smaller f number, produces a shallower depth of field, while a smaller aperture, a larger f number, produces a deeper depth of field. Shutter speed refers to the length of time that the camera's shutter is open. A faster shutter speed captures a shorter moment in time, which can be useful for freezing fast-moving subjects or reducing motion blur. A slower shutter speed captures a longer moment in time, which can be useful for intentionally creating motion blur or capturing low-light scenes. ISO is the camera's sensitivity to light. A higher ISO allows the camera to capture more light, but can also introduce noise, graininess, into the image. A lower ISO requires more light to capture an image, but produces a cleaner image with less noise. By adjusting these three settings, you can achieve the correct exposure for your image. It's important to find the right balance between the three settings, as each one can affect the final result of the image. To balance the exposure of an image, you'll need to adjust the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO of your camera. Aperture controls the amount of light that enters the camera through the lens. A larger aperture, a smaller f number, allows more light to enter the camera, while a smaller aperture, a larger f number, allows less light to enter. Shutter speed refers to the length of time that the camera's shutter is open. A faster shutter speed captures a shorter moment in time and allows less light to enter the camera, while a slower shutter speed captures a longer moment in time and allows more light to enter the camera. ISO is the camera's sensitivity to light. A higher ISO allows the camera to capture more light, but can also introduce noise, graininess, into the image. A lower ISO requires more light to capture an image, but produces a cleaner image with less noise. To balance the exposure of an image, you'll need to find the right combination of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO that produces a properly exposed image. This will depend on the lighting conditions and the subject of the image. In general, a properly exposed image will show detail in the highlights and shadows, and will not be too dark or too light. It's a good idea to practice adjusting the exposure settings of your camera in different lighting conditions, so that you can become familiar with how each setting affects the final image. You can also use your camera's light meter as a guide to help you achieve the correct exposure. In manual mode, also known as M mode, the photographer has full control over the camera's aperture, shutter speed, and ISO settings. This allows the photographer to fine-tune the exposure of the image to their specific requirements. To use manual mode, you'll need to adjust the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO settings on your camera manually. You can use the camera's light meter as a guide to help you achieve the correct exposure, or you can use a separate light meter. You can also use the camera's histogram, which is a graphical representation of the tonal values in the image, to help you judge the exposure. Using manual mode requires a bit of practice and understanding of how the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO settings affect the exposure of an image. It can be a good idea to start by using one of the semi-automatic modes, such as aperture priority or shutter priority, which allow you to control one setting while the camera adjusts the other settings for you. This can help you get a feel for how the different settings work together to produce the final image. Manual mode is a useful tool for experienced photographers who want to have full control over the exposure of their images. It's also a good way to learn more about how the different camera settings work together to produce the final image. In photography, focus refers to the sharpness of the image. A sharply focused image will have areas that are crisp and clear, while a poorly focused image will appear blurry or hazy. There are several factors that can affect the focus of an image, including the camera's autofocus system, the lens, and the distance of the subject from the camera. The camera's autofocus system uses sensors to determine the distance of the subject from the camera and adjusts the lens accordingly to produce a sharp image. Most modern cameras have a variety of autofocus modes, including single-shot autofocus, continuous autofocus, and manual focus. The lens also plays a role in the focus of the image. Some lenses are designed for a specific type of photography, such as portrait or landscape, and may have a different focusing range or depth of field. The distance of the subject from the camera can also affect the focus of the image. The closer the subject is to the camera, the more shallow the depth of field will be, which can make it more difficult to achieve a sharp focus on the subject. To achieve a sharply focused image, it's important to choose the appropriate autofocus mode and lens, and to position the camera and subject correctly. It's also a good idea to use a tripod or other support to steady the camera, as camera shake can cause the image to appear blurry. Composition refers to the way the elements of an image are arranged in the frame. It's an important aspect of photography as it can help to draw the viewer's eye to the subject of the image and create a sense of balance and harmony. There are many different composition techniques that photographers can use to create a pleasing image. Some common techniques include the rule of thirds. This involves dividing the frame into 9 equal parts using 2 equally spaced horizontal lines and 2 equally spaced vertical lines. The theory is that placing the subject along one of the lines or at the intersection of 2 lines will create a more balanced and interesting image. Leading lines, using lines within the frame, such as roads, paths, or fences, can help to draw the viewer's eye towards the subject of the image. Symmetry, symmetrical compositions can create a sense of balance and order in the image. Framing, using elements within the frame, such as doors or windows, to frame the subject can help to draw the viewer's eye to the subject and add depth to the image. Negative space, this refers to the area around the subject of the image. Using negative space effectively can help to emphasize the subject and create a sense of balance in the image. There are no hard and fast rules when it comes to composition, and different techniques will work better for different subjects and situations. The most important thing is to experiment and find what works best for you. Lighting is an important element in photography as it can affect the mood, contrast, and overall look of the image. There are many different types of lighting, including natural light, artificial light, and various lighting techniques. Natural light is light that comes from the sun or other sources in the natural environment, such as the sky or reflections off surfaces. Natural light can be very attractive and is often used by photographers to create a natural and comfortable look in their images. Artificial light is light that is created by man-made sources, such as lamps, flash units, and studio lighting. Artificial light allows photographers to control the direction, intensity, and color of the light and can be used to create a wide range of looks in an image. There are many different lighting techniques that photographers can use to create different effects in their images. Some common lighting techniques include backlighting. This involves lighting the subject from behind, which can create a halo effect around the subject and add depth to the image. Rim lighting. This involves lighting the subject from the side, which can create a rim of light around the subject and add dimension to the image. High-key lighting. This involves using bright, diffuse light to create a light and airy feel in the image. Low-key lighting. This involves using more directional and contrasty light to create a moody and atmospheric feel in the image. Experimenting with different lighting techniques can help you to create the look and feel that you want in your images. Manipulating your environment in photography refers to the act of adjusting or altering the surroundings of your subject in order to create the desired image. This can involve moving objects in the scene, changing the lighting, or adding or removing elements from the frame. For example, a photographer might move a plant or piece of furniture to create a more pleasing composition, or adjust the lighting to highlight a specific aspect of the scene. Manipulating the environment can allow the photographer to control the visual elements of the image and create the desired look and feel. It's important to be mindful of the ethical implications of manipulating the environment, and to ensure that any changes that are made do not harm people or the natural environment. Finding your own photography style is an ongoing process that involves experimenting with different techniques and subjects, and exploring your own interests and vision. One way to develop your own style is to try out different genres of photography and see which ones resonate with you. Some common genres include landscape, portrait, street, and abstract photography, to name a few. Each genre has its own set of techniques and compositions that you can learn and master. Another way to develop your style is to experiment with different camera settings and techniques, such as aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, as well as lighting and composition. By adjusting these elements, you can create different looks and effects in your images. It's also a good idea to study the work of other photographers whose work you admire and to learn from their techniques and approaches. You can do this by looking at their images, reading about their processes, and attending workshops or lectures. Most importantly, it's important to be true to yourself and to create images that reflect your own vision and interests. As you continue to practice and experiment, your own unique style will begin to emerge. Here are a few photo editing tips to help you enhance your images. Start with a good foundation. Make sure that your image is properly exposed and composed before you begin editing. A good image to start with will make it easier to achieve the look that you want. Adjust the white balance. White balance refers to the overall color temperature of the image. If the white balance is off, the image may appear too warm, yellow/orange, or too cool, blue. You can adjust the white balance in your photo editor to achieve a more natural-looking color balance. Adjust the exposure. If the image is too dark or too bright, you can adjust the exposure to bring out the details in the shadows or highlights. Be careful not to overexpose the image, as this can cause the highlights to lose detail. Adjust the contrast. Increasing the contrast can make the colors in the image appear more vibrant and the tones more defined. However, be careful not to increase the contrast too much, as this can cause the image to appear unrealistic. Adjust the saturation. Saturation refers to the intensity of the colors in the image. Increasing the saturation can make the colors more vibrant, while decreasing the saturation can make the image appear more muted. Sharpen the image. Sharpening can help to bring out the details in the image and make it appear more crisp. However, be careful not to over-sharpen the image, as this can cause it to appear artificial. Save in the right format. Save your edited image in a format that is appropriate for the intended use. For example, if you are planning to print the image, save it as a TIFF file. If you are planning to share the image online, save it as a JPEG file. Here are a few tips for using social media to showcase your photography. Choose the right platform. There are many different social media platforms to choose from, each with its own strengths and audience. Choose the platform that is most suitable for your work and that has a community of users who are interested in photography. Use hashtags. Hashtags are a great way to reach a larger audience and to connect with other photographers. Use relevant hashtags when posting your images to increase their visibility. Engage with other users, comment on and like the images of other photographers, and respond to comments and questions on your own images. Building relationships with other photographers can help to increase your visibility and to inspire new ideas. Use high-quality images. Make sure to use high-resolution images that are well composed and properly exposed. This will ensure that your images look their best when shared online. Tell a story. Captions and tags can help to give context to your images and to tell a story. Use them to share your inspiration and the story behind your images. Be consistent. Consistency in your posting and branding can help to build your online presence and to establish your personal style. Use editing tools. There are many photo editing tools available that can help you to enhance your images and to create a cohesive look. Experiment with different tools to find the ones that work best for you. To conclude, photography is the art of capturing light with a camera to create an image. It involves adjusting the camera's aperture, shutter speed, and ISO to produce a properly exposed image. There are many different types of photography, including landscape, portrait, and street, and many different cameras to choose from. To get started in photography, choose a camera that fits your budget and needs, and start practicing and experimenting with different settings and compositions. Be sure to also consider lighting, focus, and composition when taking and editing your images. Finding your own photography style is an ongoing process that involves experimenting with different techniques and subjects, and exploring your own interests and vision. You can develop your style by trying out different genres of photography, adjusting the camera settings and techniques, studying the work of other photographers, and being true to yourself. Using social media to showcase your photography can help to increase your visibility and to connect with other photographers. Use hashtags, engage with other users, Post high quality images, tell a story, be consistent, and use editing tools to effectively showcase your work. I hope these tips help you to get started in photography and to develop your own unique style.